In today's video, I'm going to show you how to create an AI customer service agent that can be embedded into your website that automatically updates itself with the latest information from your company's knowledge base. This agent also has the ability to escalate conversations by automatically creating support tickets for your team to action. This automation uses OpenAI's assistants and GPT-4o. It uses Flowise to create embeddable interactive agents. And it also uses Make.com, Firecrawl, and Airtable to keep the knowledge base continually updated. Let's get into it. To show you this in action, I created a fictitious company called Fusion, which is a mobile telecoms provider, and all of the information in this help center can be interrogated via conversations with OpenAI Assistant using this chat window. For example, can I cancel my plan? And that'll reflect everything that's in this when you leave section of the FAQs. I'll also be demonstrating how when I make changes to these FAQs, the responses from the agent reflect the new information that's in those FAQs. And that's without manually uploading those new files to OpenAI's assistant. And finally, I can also show you how this system can automatically generate support tickets. As you can see here, it's asking for a full name, email address, and phone number. So if I provide that, then it's going to go off to Freshdesk to create a support ticket, and then that can be followed up by a human agent. If you'd like access to these blueprints so that you can quickly import them at the click of a button, as you can see here, then check out the link in the description to our community, where you'll get full access to all of our system templates. We also have a full discussions area where members can ask questions and collaborate with each other. My brother Alan and I run this community where we also host weekly workshops where people can get hands-on in creating some amazing automations. We'd love to see you there, so check out the link in the description. So to get started, let's build our agent. For this, we'll be using Flowise AI. Flowise is a no-code/low-code tool for building out these conversational agents. It's incredibly powerful and can hook into a wide range of LLMs, such as OpenAI, Anthropic's Claude, or any of the open source tools as well. Flowise is open source, so you can download and self-host this. They are also releasing a cloud version, which is for $35 a month at the starter plan. You can request access to this on their website, and I'll drop a link in the description if you want to bypass that waiting list just to get started immediately. In this video, I'm going to be using a self-hosted version, which I've set up on Google Cloud. As this customer service agent is going to be public-facing, it needs to be externally accessible. That's why I have this running on Google Cloud, but you can also set this up on platforms like Render or other cloud services like AWS or Azure. So to get started, we're going to click into chat flows and create a new chat flow. That'll bring you into this blank canvas. So I'm just going to save this quickly. So we'll call this our customer support agent. And for this agent, we're going to use OpenAI's assistants. That provides us access to use function calling or tool calling, which will allow us to trigger the creation of support tickets as an escalation path. So we'll click into here and press plus, and we're just going to type in OpenAI. And there are a few different options here. You have agents, you have chat models, embeddings, LLMs, and moderation. So we're going to be using agents, and it's OpenAI Assistant. So you can just drag that out onto the canvas. So first things first, under Select Assistant, you need to press Create New, and that loads up this pop-up where you can add a new assistant. So within the pop-up, then you can add in your OpenAI credentials. If you haven't already done this, you'll need to create these, and then they'll be saved for future cards you add to the canvas. So I've set up my OpenAI credentials here. So this is looking for the OpenAI key that you can access on the dashboard of OpenAI's platform. And you can see that here where you can create a new secret key. I'll leave a link for this in the description as well. So with that saved, you can then choose an assistant model. So we're going to use GPT-4o for this. It's not the fastest when it comes to a chat interface, but it definitely has the most kind of advanced reasoning outside of GPT-4's o1. So we're going to give this a new name. So we're going to call this the Fusion Customer Support Agent. And the assistant description here is to help customers with any queries they have on Fusion. For the assistant instruction, we'll update this as we progress through this tutorial, but for the moment we're going to say act as Fusion Bot, an agent that aims to deliver exceptional customer support for Fusion, a mobile network provider in Ireland. Your objective is to provide the highest quality assistance, ensuring your answers are friendly, helpful, comprehensive, up-to-date, and based on facts without any assumptions. Craft a detailed and informative response to the customer's inquiry, addressing all aspects of their question. So that'll do for the moment. We'll update that a couple of times before we finish out this tutorial. We'll leave the temperature as is for the moment. We can play with that if we're not happy with the level of responses. Under Assistant Tools, we're going to remove Code Interpreter. And then for files, search files, we are going to add a vector store. So we do need retrieval augmented generation with this platform because we're going to be crawling this help center and bringing in all of those documents into this vector store. So we'll add a vector store here and we'll create a new one and we'll call this Fusion FAQs. And we won't set an expiration. Okay, so we'll click add to that and then that will load up the assistant here. Okay, so let's test out the bot as it stands at the moment. So for this, you press the chat button on the top right. And here we're just going to ask, hello, what is the standard cancellation policy? At this point, the agent doesn't actually have any company specific information, so it really isn't going to know. And it pretty much says that it doesn't actually know. And it gives some generic kind of information on check the terms and conditions on the contract and the website FAQs. But at least anyway, we know that the OpenAI assistant is working. So let's jump now into the OpenAI platform, and we'll come into assistance. And you can also see the vector store that we created, even though there's actually no files included in that vector store at the moment. And if you click on Fusion FAQs, you'll see that there aren't any files. So that's the next step. We need to crawl this help center on the Fusion website and import all of the data into this vector store, so that then the assistant can interrogate that vector store to provide more accurate answers. So for this, we're going to use make.com, which is a web-based automation platform. So again, I'll leave a link for this in the description below. And once you log in, go to scenarios and create a new scenario. So the first thing we'll do actually is we'll just come in here and we're just going to set a couple of variables. So if you just type set, we'll set multiple variables. And the first one will be the website URL that we're crawling. So there's our website URL. I'm just currently hosting this on SiteGround at the moment. We're going to be using a service called Firecrawl. Firecrawl is a brilliant crawling platform. It produces LLM-ready data. It has the ability to both crawl a single page, but then also to traverse through a website and crawl all of its accessible subpages as well. It's pretty cheap. There are monthly pricing plans. I'm currently on the free plan here. So you can scrape 500 pages a month, 10 scrapes per minute or 1 crawl per minute. So that plan is doing me fine for the moment. If you need kind of bigger bulk, you can work your way up through their plans as well. But in the playground, we just click into there. And if I just take out this URL, and if you drop it in here and click run, you can see that it's able to crawl that specific page. And then it produces this really nice LLM-ready content in Markdown format. And that's very clean for the likes of GPT-4o to actually interrogate. So we're going to be using the crawl feature of Firecrawl instead of single URL. And if you drop down the options here, we're just going to ignore the sitemap for the moment. I don't have a sitemap set up on this test website. And we're happy enough to only extract out the main content of the page. So we don't need the header nav or the footer nav. So if you run that, you'll see that this auto-generates the crawl. For this website, it takes about 18 seconds to complete the crawl. And as you can see there, it's streaming the crawl results and it scraped 9 pages. And we have the markdown for each of those pages. So that's brilliant. That's everything that we need to bring into or make automation and bring into the assistant. And it's really nice. If you click Get Code, it provides you all of the code that you need to bring in to actually trigger this automation within make.com. So that's what I'll do here. So let's drop in here. And first things, we're going to need this API key that you can see there. So let's call this Firecrawl API key. And I've dropped that in there. Don't worry, I'll recycle the keys after the video is finished. So that's okay. So next thing then is we need to trigger the crawl. So let's click on that. And we're going to use the make a request action. And then under URL, we're going to hit this URL. And again, that's kind of detailed here. So I'm pretty much just copying out everything that's in this code, but bringing it into this HTTP module. So hit that endpoint and we're going to post. Then we need to add a header, which is our authentication or authorization. So drop that in there. And then we need to bring in bearer. And you can see this here, bearer, and then you have the full key. So we'll do bearer, and then we'll drop in the Firecrawl API key there. Perfect. So then under body type, we're going to choose raw. It's a JSON, which is pretty standard for these types of kind of curl requests. And then the request content is essentially what you have here. So this is what we need to bring in. So I'll just copy that in. And then for URL, I'm going to set the website URL variable that I created a minute ago. So we have URL, which is the website URL. We're going to get a limit of 20 results. I think there's only 9 anyway on this test site. We'll ignore the sitemap and we're looking for the markdown format. And then parse response, we're going to choose yes to that because we want Make to be able to use the response straight away. And then we can click OK. Great. So if we click this now and run once, what's going to happen is that's going to make a request to trigger the crawl. But that's it. It's just triggered it. It hasn't actually crawled it yet. It's in the process of crawling it. And if you come into Firecrawl here and click on Dashboard and under Activity Logs, you can see the crawl that you've just triggered. So the next thing we need to do is to fetch the results of that crawl. And that's done using this check crawl status endpoint. So we'll come back into make.com. We'll click on add another module. Again, we're going to choose HTTP, make a request. And the URL that we're going to hit is what we're receiving as a response to this make a request. So if you come into this output, you can see it's actually providing you a URL to hit to fetch the results. So we'll jump back in here, hit URL, and then within these drop downs, we're going to look for URL. And that's what we're adding in there. Again, we need to add in our authorization because we need to make sure we're getting from the right account. So bearer, and then there's our API key. And again, we want to parse the response. So we'll click OK to that, and we'll click Save. And before we run that, there's one thing missing, which is we need to sleep for a period of time, because it's not an instant crawl. It's going to take 10, 20, 30 seconds for that crawl to actually succeed. That will be a lot longer if you're dealing with hundreds or thousands of pages. We're dealing with 10 pages here. So from my testing, it's taken around 18 seconds. We'll just right click on here. We'll add a module and we'll just type in sleep, and we'll just get it to sleep for a period. If you're dealing with very large numbers of pages, you will need to batch crawl and batch process, but I'm not going to get into that in this video. Okay, so in terms of a delay, we'll just put in a minute just to give it enough time to finish. Okay, and then we'll click auto align. There is the flow, and then let's click run, and let's trigger the crawl, and let's see how it works. Okay, so that 60 seconds has passed, and we now have a result. So let's have a quick look at it. So again, we'll just click this number 1 bubble, and then under the output, if you go to data, you can see success is true. Now the status is showing as failed, but I think a certain amount of them might have failed. So let's go in and into the data. And yeah, we are actually getting the pages back. So I think it's crawling, like it's crawling 17 pages. I think there's a lot of 404s in there. And so even though the status has failed, it has actually succeeded. Great. So next thing is we now need to iterate over this data. So we have 17 pages here. Again, as I mentioned, some of them have just flat out 404 failed. Others, we do have the data. So we now need to cycle through each one of these and process them. So for that, we're going to click on plus again. This time we're looking for an iterator. So if you just type in iterator, and it's also linked here on the right-hand side. So go to that. And then the data that we're looking to iterate over is this data array that we picked up here in this number 3 module. So we just click on that and click OK. Similar to what we did on the Firecrawl playground, we now have access to the markdown for each of these pages. So the next step would be to upload that data to the OpenAI assistant so that the agent has the information it needs to respond. Now, the only issue with this is if the information changes in the future, we need to be able to update that file. Now, there are limitations with the OpenAI API for this, so there isn't really an easy way for us to be able to update existing files that are attached to OpenAI assistants. So instead, we're going to need to use Airtable to track what files we are uploading to the assistant, and then also to track changes, so that if something changes on a page, we can delete out the old file and upload the new file. So then the next step is let's go to Airtable and we'll set up a bare bones structure that we can keep track of all of this data. So jump into airtable.com. They do have free plans as well that you can use. So you only really need to start paying when you start ramping up on the scale. I have a free plan, for example, and I use this quite a lot. So you definitely get a lot from their free tier. So jump into Airtable, click sign up or sign in. And then once you're in, just click start from scratch. And we're going to create a new base. And we're going to name this base our Fusion FAQs. And we can delete out all of the fields that are there and let's build this up from scratch. There's only 3 things we need to track here. So the first one is we need to know what the OpenAI file ID is. That's the first. The second is we need to know the URL that we just crawled. We'll drop in URL. I'll leave this as single line text. You could choose a URL as well. Either works really. And then the third thing that we need is what we're going to call a unique hash. So just to explain what a unique hash is, if I jump onto a page here, let's say help and support the network coverage page. This page has lots of text, okay? So there's 2 ways to determine whether the content of this page has changed. The first one is we could save the entire output of that page to Airtable. And then the next time that we crawl this page, we could do a comparison to see has anything changed in it. The problem with that is there is just a lot of information here. So it's a lot of information to store in Airtable. But better approach is to use what's called a unique hash. This is like a unique fingerprint for a page. So it takes in every single piece of information on this page and it puts it through an algorithm to output a fixed string. If anything changes on that page, and I mean if just one letter changes on that page, the next time we generate a unique hash for it, it will be completely different to the old one. So that way then what we can do is we'll generate a unique hash or that unique string now, and then the next time we crawl it, we'll generate it again and we'll compare the 2 hashes. And if there's a difference in the 2 hashes, it means something has actually changed on that page, and we can then delete out the old version of this file on OpenAI's assistant and upload the new file. And that way, the agent is going to have the most up-to-date information at all times. So that's what that unique hash field is going to store. Great, so we now have this bare bones table. We have the OpenAI file ID, the URL that has been crawled, and the unique hash. Okay, so now back into make.com, and with this iterator, what we're going to do is we're going to add another module, and we're going to go to Airtable. And what we want to do is search Airtable and look for records for this specific URL. So if you click on base, and you can choose the Fusion FAQs base that I just created here. Then for table, it's just table 1, which is, there's only one table on this base anyway. You can choose a view if you want, grid view, it doesn't make a difference. You can leave output fields empty. And the formula that we'll add here is if the URL equals the URL that's going to be set here at the iterator level. You can see all of these variables attached to the iterator. So if that URL equals the source URL, then return that row from the Airtable. So right now we don't have any rows in this table. So the next module that we will then add is a router. So let's just type in router, because we want the system to behave differently if there is data in this table versus if there isn't. So in our first flow here, if you just click on filter, what we want to set is if the total number of results, let's say, from this Airtable search equals 0, then it basically means there isn't any row specific to this URL in the table. So we need to go and upload the file to OpenAI and then save that information to Airtable. So in that case, there's nothing in Airtable. Then we can click on this plus, and then we're going to go to OpenAI, and we want to upload a file. So click on upload a file. Again, you need to create and set your connection to OpenAI here. So if you haven't done that already, just click add, follow the steps, and you can click this link as well for more information. And then in terms of the file name, what we're going to do is we're going to set that unique hash as the file name of this file. So that way then we can fetch and delete it at a future date. But then for that file name, if you click on this, let me move that over here. If you click on this A letter, we're going to set SHA-256, which is an encryption algorithm to generate this unique hash. So that's that. And then the question is, what are we generating the hash of? So if you just press left, we're going to drop in all of the information from the page. So come back in here to star, back to the iterator, and we're going to select Markdown. So that's all the Markdown that's on that page we're going to generate this unique hash from. And then the file name will be that long string of numbers and letters, .txt. And then in terms of the file data associated with that file, that is also going to be the Markdown or the information from that page. And then in terms of the purpose, you can leave the purpose as assistance because this will be attached to a vector store, which is attached to the assistance. Great, so you can press OK to that. So the next one then is we've now uploaded the file to OpenAI's platform, but we haven't associated it to the vector store that's attached to the assistant. So next thing is add another module, OpenAI, and then just type in vector, and you can see add files to a vector store. So click on that, and then you can choose your vector store. So this is the Fusion FAQs vector store that we created when we set up this assistant on Flowise. So Fusion FAQs. And then under file IDs, you need to disable this selection. So just click on map, because what we want to do is we're uploading the file here. We're going to be given a file ID after uploading that, and that's what we want to include here, because that's what we're attaching to the vector store. So if we just select that map, choose the field, and then it's the file ID is what we're picking here. And then finally, at this point, we've now uploaded the file to OpenAI. We've attached it to the vector store. So now we can go back to Airtable, and we can now create a record to track that we've uploaded this file to the assistant. So we'll come into Airtable, create a record. We'll choose the base, which is our Fusion FAQs, table 1, and then for the unique hash, again, we can recreate that SHA-256, and we're using the Markdown from the page. And that's it, so you can press OK. Okay, so we've added a lot of modules there, and we haven't actually ran it yet. So I think we're now at the point where we can run this. So let's come back into our OpenAI assistant, just refresh this. And yeah, you'll see that there aren't any files attached to the vector store yet. Okay, so let's run it. And then that's going to go to Firecrawl. It's going to crawl the entire help center of the website. It's then going to wait for 60 seconds, fetch the results, which will be 9 to 10 pages. It's then going to go through each of those results. It's going to check to see has that URL already been registered on the Airtable. And if it hasn't, which in this case it won't have because there's nothing in the Airtable, it's then going to upload the file to OpenAI, attach it to the vector store, and then make a record of that on Airtable. Now I've encountered a small error, which is I need to put these in quotation marks. And you can see the error there. formula for filtering is invalid, and it's missing quotation marks. So I've just added that in there. Click save and run it again. It's usually better practice just to test the scenario as you add module by module. I've added like 5 or 6 modules there without running it, so it might be a little bit of ironing out of things like that. Great, so that has now succeeded past that one, and it's working through and it's uploading the file and attaching it to the vector store. So that has done it for one, and it's now going through the second one. So let's come back in here and refresh. Great, we can see the first file has uploaded, and you can even see the file name there. That is the unique hash that I've been talking about, that kind of unique string of letters and numbers is attached to the vector store. If I refresh it again, brilliant, yeah. So you can see that they're now all uploading. And if we jump into Airtable, you can now see that we have our full track as well that contains the hash, that has the URLs, and it also has the OpenAI file IDs. And that's what we need to use in the future if we ever need to delete out files when we're uploading newer versions of those pages. Yeah, so it seems to be creating, it's creating rows for all of the pages that actually have 404. So it might just stop that. I'll just put in a check here just to make sure that the status code isn't 404. So let's come in here, set the condition, status code equals 200. So 200 means success. Okay, so we'll save that. Or just delete everything out and run it again. Great, so it looks like that has solved that problem. If you click into the filter here and it's still running, and you can see that for the first 8 bundles, the status code was 200. And then for the rest, it wasn't 200 essentially. So it just stopped processing at that point. And a couple more down here were actually 200. So that's what I was expecting, 9 pages. So yeah, we have 9 rows now, which is here. And if I refresh this vector store, great, you can now see the 9 files attached to the assistant. Brilliant. So I think we can now test this straight away. So if we come back in here, and then if we scrub the chat history that's just that button here to delete the chat history. OpenAI Assistant uses threads and thread IDs. So actually by clearing that, it just starts a new thread. Okay, great. So let's begin. We can say hello. Normally, when you attach a file to Assistant, it can take up to 60 seconds for that file to be able to be used by the Assistant. So that's about 60 seconds now. So what is your cancellation policy? Question mark. And here we go, Fusion's cancellation policy. And that's a really thorough answer. These are essentially the files that it's picking up the information from, and it's providing links to those. It looks a bit odd here because we're using that unique hash. So it's a very long file, .text and a download link. So those can actually be suppressed from the output as well. We'll leave it on just for troubleshooting for the moment, but we can see that this entire response has been generated from these 2 files. Great. So yeah, within the 14-day cooling off period, to cancel, you need to contact Fusion directly. There's a procedure, etc. And then if we jump into the help and support section, you can see there's a when you leave section. How do I cancel my account? And yeah, there we go. What happens if I cancel during the 14-day cooling off period and if it's outside of it? So that's pretty much being regurgitated by the chatbot. So yeah, that works very well. To suppress those files so that they can't be downloaded, if you just click on additional parameters, then you can do the disable file download toggle that you can click there. And then that stops those file names from showing and the ability to download those files. So yeah, for a customer-facing chatbot, you wouldn't allow people to download the file. However, you probably would provide the URL where they can read more about that. Excellent. So now what we're going to do is, if we go back to our scenario, let's just rename this not yet uploaded. So this entire track is when a file or a page hasn't been created on Airtable and it hasn't actually been uploaded to the assistant. So let's now simulate a change to these FAQs to see how this system deletes the old record and creates a new one reflecting the new information. If we jump into the Our Plan Costs section, under the what are rates for international calls and texts, you can see that it's just a link to a PDF. So that information isn't currently being brought into the OpenAI Assistant. So we can test that out by jumping into Flowise. And then again, let's reset the chat history to create a new thread, open up the chat, and then we'll ask, how much does it cost to call Mexico? And here's the answer. And again, yeah, it doesn't have the information from that page. So it's just providing a link to that PDF that we have linked on the FAQs. So now let's update that page from what you see here to this. So we're going to have our updated roaming rates, and we're going to go country-specific rates, Canada and Mexico, EU, Australia, New Zealand. So let's update this on the website. And then we're going to recrawl the website and see, can the agent automatically learn from this new information and provide a better response? Okay, so this is now live on the website. updated roaming rates. So now if we come back in here, what we need to do is build out this other flow now, where the URL exists in Airtable, but the hash doesn't match. So the page has changed. So let's create a new module, which is going to be, again, search records. We'll choose our base, Fusion FAQs, and our table. And then for the formula here, we're going to look for two things. So we'll just put in an and, because we need both of these checks to be true. So the first one is we need the URL to be what has been set. So URL equals, let's not forget the parentheses. So where the URL is the source URL, and let's go back in here, unique hash is the name. The unique hash equals, and now we're going to create another unique hash of the current state of the page to see is it exactly the same. So we need the SHA-256 function, which is here. And we're going to pass it the markdown. So go back to there, and then that's the markdown. So if the URL is the same and the unique hash is the same, so we'll press OK to that. So if that returns false or if that returns 0, it basically means that the file has changed. So now we can go to OpenAI. We then need to delete that file. So there's no delete file module within Make. So we just need to use the make an API call. And for this then, you need to drop in the following URL. So it's /v1//files. And then we need to drop in the OpenAI file ID that we retrieved from this module here in module 6. So that's this one, OpenAI file ID. And the method we're going to call then is delete. So we're going to delete that file from OpenAI's platform. And that's it. We can rename some of these just to make it clear. So this one is, has the page changed? And if yes, i.e. we're not getting anything back here, so we need to put in a filter then, which is if the total number of bundles from this check is 0, i.e. there's no record in Airtable where the hash is the same for a specific URL, comparing the previous and the new version, then we come in here, we delete the file, and then we can just recreate the file. So let's just if you press Shift and drag a box across those modules, you can just right-click and copy modules, and then right-click and paste the modules, and then we're pretty much just copying what we already have here. So you can drag that across to connect it, and we can remove that filter because we don't need it. And then the upload the file stays exactly the same. We're going to upload a new file now to OpenAI now that we've deleted the old file. We're going to attach that new file to the vector store. And then actually for the Airtable module, you need to delete that one because we're not going to create a record, we're going to update a record. So delete that module, add another module, go to Airtable, and then this is update a record, choose the table, and here we need to use the ID that we retrieved back a few modules ago. So the record ID that you see there is the one from module 6 here, which is this one. And then you can set the new OpenAI file ID for this URL, which is in module 13. We don't need the URL, it's already saved on Airtable for this line or for this row. And then for the unique hash, again, we can just create a new unique hash now, which is essentially copying what we used in the check a minute ago. So SHA-256, and then we can just choose the markdown. And that's it. Press OK, and then we can save that. And if we come into here, just before we run this, so this stream triggers when the URL isn't in the Airtable, whereas we need this stream to trigger when the URL is in the Airtable. So you can just do total number of bundles is greater than 0. Oh, sorry, cancel that. This one, total number of bundles is greater than 0. And the label for this one then is already uploaded. Brilliant. So yeah, so for the our plan costs page that we just uploaded, once we trigger this now, it's going to go down this track. And it's going to figure out that the hash is actually different now for this URL. So it's going to delete that file and upload a new one and attach it to the vector store and update the record on Airtable. That's the theory. So let's run it and let's see how it goes. In the meantime, I'll just rename this. So this is our Fusion FAQs incremental update. So that's now run, and we do have one error actually. Let's have a look. I think I'm missing quotation marks again. Yep, sure am. There we go. That should do it. Okay, so that has run, and as you can see, this check has gone through 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 times, and it has only once went through to upload that new file. And if we come in here and refresh, we'll probably now see our new file appearing. Yep, and you can see it there. So that was uploaded on 13/24. So that's the latest one that's been uploaded. Okay, so let's test this out on Flowise now. So we're going to ask the same question. How much does it cost to call Mexico? Let me scrub the history, create a new thread, and then jump in here. How much does it cost to call Mexico? And here we go. Yeah, the cost to call Mexico is 25 cents a minute, 10 cents for text messages, 2 gigs per megabyte. And that is exactly what we have here. So that's it. That's how you automatically update your agent with fresh information based on a crawl. That kind of crawl can be set up and scheduled to run, let's say, on a regular basis. So the scheduling down here could be set to run on a daily basis where it carries out a crawl of the website, and any changes will be automatically uploaded to your agent. And if there's no changes, nothing happens. All of that then is kind of coordinated through this very simple Airtable just to keep track of IDs, because you can't actually associate metadata with files on OpenAI system, which is really annoying. But anyway, onwards and upwards. Great, so we now have our incremental update system. We now have a chatbot that has some level of RAG, or retrieval augmented generation. It has knowledge that it can base its answers off. So next we're going to add some agentic features to this bot. So what we want to do is have an escalation path so that someone can trigger a support request if they're not really getting the answer that they're looking for. So we're going to do that through this allowed tools feature here in Flowise, or OpenAI's assistant. So if we just save that and exit out of it, and then jump into tools here, and then you can click create. So we're going to create a function that can be called by this agent. So this one can be, let's say, generate support request. And the tool description is, if the user isn't getting the resolution they are looking for, then offer the ability to create a support ticket for a human advisor to look into. So what we want to do is to have this generate support request feature to create a new support ticket on Freshdesk. So I'm just using Freshdesk as an example here. And Freshdesk is a kind of standard customer support ticketing software, but this type of flow would work for any support ticketing system that you're using. So I've just created a demo account on this for us to integrate with. And here is our demo Freshdesk account, and I have no contacts or tickets set up on this yet. So what we'll do is we're going to use this functionality to generate a ticket that could then go to a human agent. So when you're creating tickets on Freshdesk, you obviously need certain bits of information. So if you look at the interface here, you need to know who the contact is, what the subject of the ticket is, obviously a description of the ticket. So we need to extract all of that information from the conversation, and that's done using this input schema. So if we come into Flowise and then add items for this input schema, the first thing we want to know is what is the full name of the person that is making the request. That is the full name of the customer. And we're going to set this to required. So then the second thing is, what is the email address? Because that's going to be the primary key that we use to search in Freshdesk. So description, the email address of the customer. Always best to be quite descriptive with these, because the actual LLM is going to be using these to determine how to actually populate out the various attributes. Next up, we're going to use phone number under property. And that'll be a string as well. We could set number, but it's just easier setting it as a string. The less validation, the better, because people might end up putting, prefixes and brackets and spaces and dashes and the works. So it can be a bit of a mess if you set that as number. So I just leave it as string for the moment, and you can kind of process it later. We'll do add another item. We also want to know what the issue description is. So again, we'll set that to string. And here we're going to say, what is the problem the customer is having that can't be solved through the information in the knowledge base. Finally, add one more item, which is the ticket subject. And we want the system to auto-generate a very short ticket subject based off the issue description. So there's that. Excellent. And we'll just set all of these to required, because we need all of this filled out. So what's going to happen then is, depending on how the agent responds, if the agent realizes he's not providing an answer that's to the satisfaction of the customer, he can then suggest, I can create a support ticket on your behalf. Provide me the full name, the email address, phone number, issue description, and a ticket subject. And then once it has that information, it's going to trigger this JavaScript function. So what we need to do then is, if you just click See Example, that will auto-load this JavaScript function with boilerplate code. And then we're going to make a few changes to this. So in another tab, if you open up make.com, we're going to save this incremental update scenario, and we're going to create a new scenario now to auto-create a support ticket. So get out of that, click on scenarios, create a new scenario, and then this one will be auto-create support ticket. Excellent. And then if you click plus, what we want to do is use a webhook. So just type in web and go to custom webhook, and then you can add a new webhook here, which is going to be let's say it's a Flowise webhook for ticket creation. And we'll click save, and then that provides a URL that we can then copy in to Flowise. So if you come back in here, you don't really need to understand a lot of this code if you just make the changes as I kind of talk through here. So remove out this URL, just delete that, I just paste in the new URL. Second thing then is under method, just type in post. So we're posting this data to this endpoint. The third thing is under headers. You want to type in body, colon, and then we're going to type in all caps JSON, stringify, stringify. Open up some brackets, and then inside those brackets, open up some curly brackets and just press enter. And then what we need is, so you can copy there, that property. So we have full name, colon, and again, single quotes. And it kind of it describes what you need to do up here because we're setting all of these variables in the input schema and they're now accessible like that. So again, if you type in full name, it does need this $ in front of it. And the other thing is because we're using make.com, it also needs that wrapped in these curly brackets as well. So it's $, curly bracket, $, and then the variable name. And that's pretty much it. So we just need to copy that out. So you just copy that a few times and then just bring in your new variables. So what do we have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And then you just copy and paste. And make sure to leave that $ there at the end as well. Phone number. So this is really the only code that you need to do within this entire project. And what we're doing here is we're passing these variables into make.com so it can then pass them on to the support ticket software. And that should do it. Okay, so then we click add and we now have our generate support request. So then back into our customer support agent. And from here, then we can now link up this new custom tool that we created. So for that, then you press on the plus button and then just type in custom. And then under tools, you'll see this custom tool. So just drag that onto the canvas, move things around a little bit. And then you want to select that new tool that you just created. And that's that. And then you can drag a connection between that custom tool and the allowed tools. So we can save that. And then if we run that, this is waiting for a ping to that URL that we set in the custom tool. So the next thing we need to do is we need to go into this OpenAI assistant and just explain in the instructions to the model that if you need to escalate things, use this tool. So if you come back out of here, jump into assistance, we have our Fusion Customer Support Assistant. And now we're going to add some additional information in here to encourage the agent to trigger this support ticket generation flow in certain circumstances. So we're just going to add in another paragraph here. So if a question cannot be answered with the information given, answer politely that you don't know and offer the customer an escalation pathway where you can create a support ticket for them. Use the generate support ticket function tool for this and ensure you have all the required information for that tool. Please also generate a ticket subject based on the issue description. Okay, so we'll save that and then go back into our chat flow and now we can test this out. So back in here, and we'll ask the question, hello, I can't access the internet. So that we can try to simulate a scenario where the agent is going to propose the idea of generating a support ticket. So it's provided lots of information there, but it's also saying, yeah, I can create a support ticket for you if you want. I just need your full name, email address, and telephone number. So great. Full name, Daniel Walsh, email address, daniel@test.com. If you press enter there, it'll probably still ask for the phone number again, which is nice. Very good. I also need your phone number. Could you please provide that? So that's very, very good. No worries. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, so that's gone off. That's encountered an error. Yeah, I'm missing a comma. So headers, comma, body. There we go. Save that. Back in here. And let's simulate that again. Okay, so I've done that again, fixed the issue. It's loading, and then here on make, it's still waiting for a hit to this webhook. And great, there you go. We now have the information coming through. So now next step is we need to use that information to create our support ticket on Freshdesk. Just so you know, I had to make a small change to the file. So this requires single quotes, whereas here it's actually looking for backticks. So yeah, you can see there it's very slightly different. Let me just zoom in for you there. That's a single quote. That's a backtick. There you go. Didn't know that. But anyway, it works when you use backtick. Okay, so we'll save that. And now we are getting the variable values through. So then we'll come in here, click add another module. So this will be a pretty simple scenario. We'll go to Freshdesk and we're just going to search for a contact based off the email address that they provide. So filter parameter will be email, and we'll press equal to and drop in the email address that we're getting from here, which is not actually showing. So let me trigger this again, and then we can load up these variables into the buffer. Just press OK to that, save, run once, and I'll just trigger this whole thing again. Okay, so I've just asked it to create a ticket with that information. So this should come through now on make. Brilliant. Yep, so we now have the information, and then back into here, and yeah, we can now choose it. So equals that email address. Press OK to that. Don't worry that it's shown as an error because all we needed to do was just load up those variables into the memory. So then from here, then we're just going to use a router because we want two different flows. So the first one is if the user doesn't exist on Freshdesk, we need to create that user and then create the ticket. So let's do this one first. So if the total number of results from that search equals 0, then we're going to come in here and we're going to go to Freshdesk and create a contact, which is that. And then the full name we'll set to what we got from the webhook. Email address is what we got from the webhook. Phone number is what we got from the webhook. And that's that. And then we can then also, as a separate module, create a ticket. And then we're going to use the ID from this create a contact module to assign the ticket to that contact. So search a requester, we're just going to put in the contact ID that you see there. The subject is going to be what was auto-generated by ChatGPT. So that's ticket subject. And then ticket description, we're going to have as the issue description. So we'll press OK to that. Status, open, priority. You could actually have a GPT-4o auto-generate a priority based off the issue description. I'll just set it to medium for the moment. Excellent, that's that flow. When the contact doesn't exist on the help desk, you just create it and then create the ticket. Whereas if the contact does exist, you can just create the ticket. So we can just right-click and clone that one, delete that module, and then under here, it's if total number of bundles is greater than 0, then go that direction. And here then, in terms of the ID, we're not using the ID from this module, we're using the ID from this module. So get rid of that, and then contact ID from module 2, and then everything else should stay the same. So let's save that. And now we can test the end-to-end again. So back into here, and I'll ask it to create a ticket again. We'll create a support ticket with that information. Excellent, yeah, so it's gone off, and it's created the contact, and it's created the ticket. So let's have a look back into here, and yeah, there's our ticket. Cannot access internet on 5G, despite having a service active on account. So brilliant. And then you can also see the contact there as well. So it's possible to even include the entire conversation history in that ticket as well. You just need to pass it as one of those input schema variables within the tool, and then that can all load up into Freshdesk. And that's pretty much the auto-create support ticket flow. What's left to do is to now embed this chatbot into the Fusion website so that end customers can actually trigger it themselves. That could be a small pop-up that you see here on the right-hand side, or it could be a full page embed that you have. So if you click on this API endpoint, you'll see a pop-up which shows different options for embedding Flowise conversational apps within websites. So we're going to be using the pop-up HTML version here. So all we need to do is just copy out this code, drop it into the body of the HTML of the page, and then that's it. The pop-up will load. So let's just do that very quickly. So I've now added that script to the body tag of the page and uploaded it. So here's the customer service agent rendered on the page. So you'll see the pop-up. And let's ask that question about the call plans for Mexico. How much does it cost to call Mexico? And there we go. That's the new information that's in the plan costs. So that's the full end-to-end on creating a customer service agent that you can embed onto a website that's able to have an up-to-date view of all of the knowledge that's published on your help center, and also has an escalation path so that it can create support tickets if customers aren't getting the right answers from the bot itself. If you want access to these blueprints so that you can quickly import them at the click of a button, then check out the link in the description to our community, where you're able to access this template plus many others. My brother Alan and I run this platform, where we also host weekly automation workshops where people can dive in and get hands-on in creating some amazing automations.